So this is basically a very quick multi-loop benchmark test at 3840 by 1600 ultra wide with Metro Exodus enhanced with the deep end dark or whatever mod done with a stock 3080 Ti. I'm going to run 2 to 3 loops and then record specifically, the whole point of this, the thermal metrics related to a overclock of 5.2 gigahertz performance cores and 4.1 gigahertz on the efficiency cores, and then look at the volts and temps for each, as well as usage stats and GPU temps and whatnot. But I'm doing it specifically because the EVGA 3080 Ti, being a non-exhausting card, was basically baking the inside of my case. So I cut 2 holes in the acrylic side panel of my Corsair 780 Ti here, or 780 TKs, which are running very effectively and very quietly to supplement that rear 140 exhaust. And frankly, even at the lowest setting, they put out a crap ton of air, and so I'm wanting to see how well they improve the overall performance of the system with a rather hot overclock. Can't even say that it's technically truly stable, just speaking in regards to things like Prime 95, small FFTs or whatever. But I don't tend to care much about that stuff anymore. If I can work and play with it, then it's fine. So that's the end of this preliminary video shot with the cell phone, and the rest will be done via NVIDIA Shadowplay. Okay, so this will be a simple test using Metro Exodus Enhanced with the deep in dark option enabled. I'm not sure if that translates into the benchmark or not, but here's the benchmark settings. I'm using Ultra, which is fine for me. NVIDIA DLSS I always use. Quality reflections, I'm going to do full ray traced, variable rate shading 2 times, Hairworks off, advanced physics on, tessellation full. I'm going to go for 2 runs. I say go for 2 runs because I am testing specifically a 5.2 gigahertz performance core, 4.1 gigahertz efficiency core on a 12700 KF. I would say just a regular mid-range bend CPU with some pretty hacker, brute hack kind of BIOS settings, which are dumb and don't make any sense, so I'm not going to go into the details, but I want to see if I can complete these and then look at the data here, thermally, voltages, etc., frames per second as recorded by RTSS. If the browser doesn't load after the benchmark is done, like it has in the past, or has not done in the past. So hopefully that'll work. So I'm going to go ahead and start it and see if we can make this happen. And the EVGA 3080 Ti is running at stock settings here with a fan curve that allows a maximum of 87% speed, and the goal is to keep it around 70 degrees Celsius on the core and below 80 on VRAM. So let me go ahead and run this. And away we go. I'm using Reshade for Luma Sharpen, by the way. That's about it. I tend to like to use Reshade when I don't enable HDR. Those would be the general settings right there. But again, as the previous video I'm going to try to edit in with Vegas Pro will go over is this is specifically testing GPU core temps after cutting in a couple holes in the side panel of my 780T case for exhausts. Seems to be working the core right now. GPU core is 67, GPU VRAM's at 70. We'll see what happens after 2 runs. It's really all I got time for, or patience. But CPU looks good. All the cores are running where they're supposed to be, stuck static, all core, not changing, all at relatively good temps. Package it's the mid-60s every now and then, but that's okay. And starting the second and final loop. Frames throughout seem pretty good, all in the 90 to 100 range. At the settings shown at the start of this bench run. Cores up to around 70, VRAM's up to around 74. I'd imagine after 10 runs, the GPU core would probably hit around 72 max, and the VRAM would get up to around 78 or 79. But the 12700KF overclock seems to be doing pretty good for a 5.2, 4.1 static all core, and temps all look fine. And my weird BIOS settings for hacking this overclock seems to be keeping the voltages under 1.4. Which is kind of what my goal was, although it gets close at times. There's GPU core at 71. Like I said, if I did this 10 times, it'd get up around 75, I think. And I did continue with the capture showing the general averages for both loops over here. Run 1 saw a average frame rate of 82, run 2 82.01. Max and min I really don't pay much attention to, but that's about ideal and what I was expecting for these settings right here. Had I gone extreme, it would go down exponentially. I could have gone hybrid reflections for an even a little better boost, but the main thing was the CPU performance at 5.2 gigahertz performance core and 4.1 efficiency cores. Saw a maximum voltage of 1.404 An average voltage of 1.379. Currently, just sitting kind of idle. It's running about 1.38. Core temps all maxed out in the mid 60s, with the max core being 68 degrees, package 69 degrees. All that looks good. Memory overclock from 6000 to 6400. Ran fine with the stock timings. The DIMMs, temps were all excellent across the board. I only added 10 extra volts to the stock of 1.25 volts. And GPU temperature, max core was 71. Hotspot, if you care to even think about that, is 78. I tend to look at VRAM temp. That's 76, which is golden. I don't know if it recorded the frames. I already saw that on the readout over here in the browser, but RTS has said the max frames was 104 and the average was 37. I guess that's considering after the bench and whatnot. So over here is the proper data for frames. Average frame rate being around 82. Which is fine. I could play. That's about the lowest that I would like to play at. I would generally change some things to run closer to 100, but otherwise looks pretty good. Pretty stoked. That's not a bad overclock for the CPU. And still a pretty demanding game.